have with us Mohammad Aurangzeb. He's the president and CEO of HBL. And Mohammad Aurangzeb joined HBL on 30th April 2018 as the president. Prior to this responsibility, Mr. Aurangzeb was the CEO for JP Morgan's Global Corporate Bank, which was based in Asia with a rich international banking experience. And he has received his BS and MBA degrees from the Wharton School. And he's got a lot of feathers in his cap, but I'm quickly going to go towards him. And today he'll be discussing what the experiences of a CEO are in today's era of digitalization. So this one should be really interesting. His title of talk is the era, like I said, of digitalization. So without any further delay, let's move on over to Mr. Mohammad Aurangzeb, the president and CEO of HBL.
It's a real pleasure to once again be at the annual 021Disrupt Tech Conference. I would like to express our appreciation to Janara and Nest 10 for organizing this event. Last time I had the pleasure to be in that large room and interact with a lot of people, but I guess this is the new norm in any case. And it is, from my perspective, exciting coming together, even in this context, with new ideas, platform for all of us to, quite frankly, learn from each other and exhibit our best efforts. And I will come back to the learning part of it at the very end as well. The topic that I've been asked to give some of my views on is, what does it mean to be a CEO in a world which is going to be led by digitalization. But before we talk about the role of the CEO, I do think we should consider the evolving new world order. And, the five forces which will continue to shape the financial services industry and this overall environment and this industry is certainly going to be more volatile, is going to be more uncertain, and we are going to be dealing, and whoever comes in as the future CEOs are certainly going to be dealing with more complex environment than ever before. And let me go through some of these forces before we talk about the role of the future CEO. The first one is the heightened customer expectations. When we look back at 2020, it's going to be a year where we were hit by the ultimate black swan. But it's also going to be remembered as a year where digital became hygiene. And as a result of that, the digital experiences, and all of us have gone through a step change in terms of digital transactions going through our various platforms. But as far as the customers are concerned, they have now become accustomed to stuff being faster, cheaper, more efficient. And believe me, this is now going to be muscle memory. This is not going to go away. So heightened customer expectations. Number two, competition. Real challenge to incumbents from neobanks and non-traditional participants. They're going to be full service banks like ourselves, to consumer, money transfer, digital wallet providers. And when we talk about competition and non-traditional players, I always refer to our friends in China. We have the largest banks in the world, starting with ICBC in China. And 90% of the payment business is outside the industry. And we know with whom, right? The Alipays and the Tencents of the world, etc. So that's the new world order in terms of the competitive landscape. The third one is the macroeconomic world that we are going to be living in. I mean, a number of economists and all of us are asked to, talk about the letters. Is it V-shaped, U-shaped, L-shaped? But the reality is it's going to be, the whole shape of the recovery, from my perspective, is going to be slow, it's going to be uncertain, and it's going to be uneven. And on top of that, we are all going to be dealing with the political economies which are sort of shaping the world today. The fourth one is the regulatory landscape. And I not only refer to here the AML, KYC, sanctions, transaction monitoring type of stuff, or the capital liquidity type of ratios which are coming up, but from where I sit, I do think we will see more interventionist approach from the regulators around the world, including the one here from State Bank of Pakistan as well, with a view to increase competition, so reducing barriers to entry, a lot more emphasis on cybersecurity, protection of data, supporting vulnerable customers, data privacy, and enterprise resilience. So we will see a more activist regime from the regulators. And the last one, which is, I guess, the most critical one, is technology, because it's all around digital transformation journeys. And what this has done, and I go back to my earlier point about customer expectations, it has redefined and it will continue to redefine bank-customer relationships. And banking is going to become more and more personalized across customer devices and channels as we go forward. So what this means is that the CEOs who are going to be coming in the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, they have to be ready, willing, and able to deal with this complexity and everything else that's coming through with respect to the digital transformation. Now, a few things which I want to mention with respect to the type of expectations which are going to be associated with the future CEOs. They will have to be nimble and agile. Clearly, there will be a requirement to be precise in decision making, but they'll have to be on their toes and swift in responding to problems. So all of us like to, in some sense, we want to, dot the I's and cross the T's when, before we sort of make our decisions. And in some sense, at times we get into analysis paralysis as well. But I always say that a wrong decision is better than no decision. And hopefully we are not going to be making a lot of wrong decisions. But this decision making and decision making on the go, given all the forces that I just mentioned, you're not going to have a lot of time to do all the stuff that you want to do to get to a correct decision. But you have to be, the CEOs will have to be nimble and agile around that. Then we come to sort of the technology part of it, right? And I do believe that the leaders of the future will find that the pure technology element of digital transformation, I don't think is going to be the difficult part any longer. It is a more holistic approach, and I'll dwell on that for a couple of minutes, where the challenge would lie and lead to the success or failures of these CEOs. So starting with, can these CEOs inculcate open banking mindset platform as a service approach? So get out of this, not made here approach, which sort of we get our defenses up. Is not made here, then, is it really the right thing to do? But they will need to move the institution, not just themselves, the institution, towards offerings, I would say, that are demonstrably better for the customer than for the bank. Now, that would require pushing boundaries of business models. So moving towards a trusted day-to-day advisor, and that might very well require a fine balancing or trade-offs in terms of self-cannibalization of short-term product revenues to secure long-term customer loyalty and value. The third one I would say is becoming a truly data-driven organization. Now, data-driven decision-making will have to permeate every aspect of the organization. And, from the bank's perspective, I mean, as we, in HBL, we have come in, with this mantra or slogan that we're going to be a technology company with a banking license. And this data-driven decision-making is going to be at the core of it. And I genuinely believe that if data is the new oil, then banks have advantage access to some of the richest fields. Now, the future CEOs now need to make sure that they mine these fields well and they do the right thing in terms of excelling in this discipline as they go forward. The next one I want to talk about, we talk about, and I started with that, be agile and nimble. But the reality is, today we talk about agility, but there's a lot of lip service being paid to enterprise agility at the C-suite level. Now, leaders of tomorrow will need to embrace enterprise agility as something necessitating change in every aspect of how institutions are run, banks are run, and they will need to treat it. And I'm a strong believer in that they will need to treat it as a revolution rather than evolution. The next one I want to talk about is some of the traits that these leaders will bring in, that they will have to follow a very disciplined fintech engagement model, which quite frankly goes beyond having innovation labs or venture capital investment stakes. It will depend on how these leaders make these institutions engage with the broader ecosystem to filter, to prioritize, and monetize the good ideas of other players. And I think Janara will actually agree with me. This is the core theme of this conference, because I was there last year as well, and bringing all of this talent together, thinking through the wider ecosystem. But this is going to be a big determinant, from my perspective, of the future CEOs' success and staying at the forefront of the industry. Now, while we talk about technology and digital transformation, the reality is we are going to remain in people's business, right? I mean, the people agenda is going to be of huge importance for the future leaders as they come together. I mean, I'm co-chairing a financial services panel for World Economic Forum and sponsored by Punjab Skill Development Fund as well, where along with some other industry leaders, we are just thinking through as to how we are going to upskill and reskill the workforce which is with us today. Now, we need to hire people, we need to retain our existing people, but all of this needs to be built upon analytical thinking, creativity, and flexibility. Now, the future leaders will have to think very, very strongly about these soft skills as they go for the skill set that they will need in terms of data scientists, etc., because these are going to be the most sought after skills for a workforce, an employee organization going forward. Another one, and it's a huge priority for HBL, and certainly from my perspective as well, hiring more women and hiring them at senior levels, because the study shows that women make better leaders, better decision makers. They are agile team players, more empathetic and solution oriented. So it's not just driving a diversity agenda. This is going to be absolutely critical as we move things forward. Now, I sincerely hope that the future CEO of HBL will be a woman. I also think that a future CEO of HBL may not actually be a banker, may be a data scientist, maybe someone who is embedded in another technology discipline. All of these things are not out of the realm of possibility in the next 5 years or even 10 years as we go forward. Now, this was all in the realm of sort of technology and digital transformation, but a few things which are going to remain universal truths as we go forward, right? So any CEO, whether that CEO is today or in the digital world or 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road, customer centricity, Yes, we will use technology. Yes, we will harness its power to build solutions. We should hire the right people. We should lead from the top. We should inspire. And future leaders all need to do all of this. But to ultimately serve the customer, customer centricity will have to be at the core of these organizations. And the successful CEOs and leaders will make sure for these organizations as they go forward. The second one, and there I have to recognize Satya as the CEO of Microsoft. And when he talked about the turnaround that happened under his leadership, because a few years back someone must have talked to him about how do you see yourself as the future CEO, and I just picked up the first principle that he mentioned, that what he brought to that organization was to move from know it all to learn it all. And I do think this learning DNA, and I started with that because, again, this is part of the core theme of this conference is learning from each other. This learning DNA is going to define the future and is going to define the success of the future CEOs and leaders as they come into their positions and organizations going forward. I would again like to express my sincere thanks and gratitude to the organizers. It's a huge honor to have been invited to speak at this forum, and I wish all the participants and organizers the very best for the entire conference. Thank you very much.